Good evening, everyone. Good morning, wherever you are. Today we have a very special episode. We have a very exclusive interview today with Mr. Ray Buffer, a very known person in the entertainment sector. Ray, how are you today?
I'm very good. I was grooving at your theme music there at the top.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to to have you here. It's an enormous pleasure. I was also a fan of yours back in the 90s when they came out True Lies and many other movies after that. For the ones who don't know, I mean, Ray Buffer have entered several works in the entertainment sector, and he's been in over 20 years. So, Ray, tell us a bit about that. How did this all start? I mean, was just from child? Was it afterwards? How was your journey?
Yeah, I would say it was from childhood. I was, really, my first professional gig was when I was a teenager. So really, I've been at this about 40 years, but it's been on and off, and mostly on. I started out in music, singing and playing various instruments, and I also fell in love with musical theater at an early age, and that's what I went to school for was musical theater, and got my degree in Florida, and
Okay.
stayed in Florida until '99. Worked a little bit in Orlando, Florida, for about 5 years, and then moved out to Southern California in '99, turn of the millennium, and found some success. I started small and kind of worked up to some bigger jobs around 2004, and just when you think things are going to take off, that's usually when
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
that's when they don't, right? And so hubris, didn't really happen the way I wanted it to, and I couldn't continue being a starving artist, so I had to get back to working some salaried jobs. And I decided, though, at that time, instead of going back and working in an unrelated field, I'd get some experience working behind the scenes. So I did some marketing for a big theater company. I was a general manager for an opera company. And then that experience led me to decide to start my own company. And
Right.
so I had a theater company called the Relevant Stage that I ran for produced and directed theater for a few years. And then I moved to Long Beach and started another company with a friend called Art and Relation. And we produced and directed shows for 3 or 4 years. And then the pandemic happened. And just before the pandemic, I was deciding to stop producing, stop directing, and get back into acting and just
Okay.
focus on the acting. Because I made a discovery in those theater years that I don't like directing and producing a show that I'm in because it's hard to turn off the ears of the director when you're on stage trying to perform. It's hard to focus. At least it was for me. I'm not that great of a multitasker. So it was a learning experience that taught me get back to what you love, which was acting and
Yeah.
performing, and focus on that. And so that's what I've been doing for about 5 or 6 years, since just before the pandemic. And it's gotten to the point where I'm making a decent living just doing that, just acting, and that's where I wanted to be.
Ray, tell us a bit about your previous projects and the movies you were in. Just a small resume because you have a big portfolio. And what was the most exciting moment when you were acting?
Yeah, it's hard to pick one, but I mean, everything leads to the next thing, right? I started out small. I mean, a lot of those big projects in the '90s that you like, those were projects that I did as a background actor when I was starting out. So I had very small part. But yeah, True Lies, Ace Ventura, those were monumental films now to look back nostalgia wise and say, yeah, I was on the set of those movies. Um, but I was a little tiny police captain in the scene in True Lies, where the Harrier jet lands and his daughter's on the nose of the aircraft, and right between them you'll see a police car, and I'm like the little speck near the police car, on a radio. So for about 3 seconds of screen time. But those were the types of things that helped to build experience and build my career to the point where, I could be confident showing up and knowing my dialogue and being a professional actor and getting things done in one take, which is really what the industry wants these days because it's so expensive to produce um, these streaming shows and the TV shows and the films that you see. Um, I've had some really enjoyable experiences doing independent shorts, independent films, because in those environments, I'm a little bit of a bigger fish than in a big production studio environment where I might just have a supporting role in something. So each film, each project has its own um, attraction, its own memories, its own specialness.
Absolutely, absolutely. From I mean, what were the acting that you had in some of these movies that you remember that were a bit more hard for you to do? Was it like action or dialogue? What exactly was it for you?
Yeah, there's a film that hasn't come out yet that I shot in Washington a couple years ago. That was challenging because I had to fire a spear gun or a crossbow, rather. Um, I had to, I'm a big guy. I'm almost 300 pounds. And we had these sheer cliffs that we were shooting on that they had to basically put ladders next to so that I could climb up the next rock. I'm in a very tight fitting costume, and I don't think they planned in terms of location for someone my size having to get to certain areas of the rock cliff face over the river.
Sure.
So I think that added time to them. So that was interesting. It was an action movie. I had to fire a gun and drive a jeep at high speeds, and you know it was an interesting experience. Freezing cold waters. I had to lay in this freezing cold water for minutes at a time, and um, I don't want to give my character's fate away, but there was a waterfall. There were lots of interesting aspects to filming that I hadn't quite processed what I would have to do and what a stunt
Yeah.
person might have to do for me. And I did have a stunt person, but I did a lot of the stuff myself, and so it was an undertaking. I had another project, Into the Wild Frontier, that I did a few years back for INSP TV, and it's a mixture of documentary and live action. And I played a French Canadian villain named Jean um, Chenard, and I had to, horseback ride. I had to fire a period gun at the camera lens. Uh, we had, fist fights, wrestling.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of a mix of that Western kind of vibe going on, and being a major villain in that episode. It was fun, and I got to do the French Canadian accent. I got to be the bully, and the fate of bullies in most of these stories. So I got to have a nice little death at the end as well.
Very nice, very nice. It's awesome, to see how you adapt from different roles and how you made up, inside of different characterizations and the acting itself. It's really amazing. So, from all these, I mean, of course, you had a lot of involvement with main actors. Which are the ones that if you want to, to share that, which are the ones that you most remember that you had more engagement with?
Yeah, I got some inspiration. I think in the mid '90s, I worked on a series called Sequest, Sequest DSV, shot in Orlando, and I was kind of a regular bit player on one season, and I got to work with Michael Ironside, who was and still is a great character actor, someone who I had admired growing up, watching movies like Scanners and um, other types of things that he had been in that he has this alpha this alpha kind of personality, this deep resonant voice.
Hmm.
Um, he's always either the strong good guy or a strong bad guy. And I guess I got inspiration and maybe subliminal guidance from talking to him and working with him, um, insight into what I could do, in insight into how I should maybe shape the way the world perceives me. I'm a big guy and I have a deep voice. I usually now play mostly villains or heroes, but mostly villains or the flip side, a big guy that you don't envision doing something silly.
Right.
I'll get those
Right.
kind of roles. A biker who, you know, attends a Tupperware party or something out of character. You see, um, so that's kind of my what I capitalize on now. Um, but yeah, I got
So
to see some major celebrities do some very interesting things throughout the years.
very nice, very nice. During the years, of course, technology changed, and of course, I believe movie and the way it's recorded also in how it was made also was changed too. How was this change for you? Because I mean, you started from the '90s to the era of digitalization, so of course there was a lot of transformations within movies. How was this transformation for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just thinking about that the other day. Back in the days of analog filmmaking, um, you used to know a scene was over when they would say "check the gate." But that's a term that was used in analog filmmaking. Now
Right.
that we're digital, you don't hear that term anymore. So, the words we use in the filmmaking world have changed as well, and the language of filmmaking. I think that a few things have factored in. We had a strike with the SAG union. We had the writer's strike. We had the fires recently here in California. And we've got streaming services kind of taking over for traditional network TV that we had here in the States. So there's a confluence of things going on in the industry right now. And here in California, we've got a lot of productions that are skipping to other states because there's more tax incentives, and it's cheaper for them on the bottom line to produce in Canada or in Atlanta, Georgia, or in
Right.
Montana or somewhere else. So there's a number of things that need to happen to kind of bring the industry back here, and part of that is the responsibility of the governor of California to kind of deregulate a lot of things and make it more attractive to keep production here in the state. Um, and there's the recovery from the fires. We've got celebrities and filmmakers that are relocating, using this time to maybe go to Montana or Atlanta, Georgia, as opposed to staying here in California. So we've got to find a way to keep the industry moving forward. There's something new that I'm seeing now called vertical soap operas, and these are actual soap operas that are being built for like the vertical TikTok format, and
Okay.
they're being consumed and watched on apps that you download rather than a channel or um, a network or a streaming service. So you download the app, you pay a fee, or you watch ads, and you get to watch this entertainment. And there's more of the industry going this way as well. So I think the industry itself is starting to decide what it wants to be, and it's an interesting transitional time to be a part of it.
So I guess what you're saying is there is like a testing within the industry because they have no clear where they want to go. So they are trying to see where the audience grabs it or what is the attraction to see. Okay, so this is the way or that's the way, right? So and of course, according to each Swift, there's a big transformation in it, uh, technologically and also effortlessly from people that are involved, right? And I guess also the fires itself, with this relocation, as you just mentioned, it's not clear where people are involved in cinema, which mainly were around LA area and all this part that was affected. What is the range of what's going to happen now in the future? I mean, will the people get mobilized outside the country or another county? What's your vision regarding all this shift?
Can you repeat the last part of your question
No,
again?
no,
You were
well,
breaking up a little
I
bit.
was
Sorry.
saying that what is your vision regarding all these changes? The people moving to other counties or, moving internationally, because of course it will affect a lot of people that mainly live in LA area, right? I mean, all that area was where all everyone involved in movies that were living in because it's nearby. How does that affect the whole factor now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be over dramatic. I mean, yes,
Right.
thousands of people have suffered from the fires, but California hasn't fallen into the ocean yet. It's still a beautiful state. It's still a ripe place for filmmaking. And I think a lot of people that were victims of the fire, they still love California. I would hope that they're finding ways of relocating within the state, and that the industry in the long term won't necessarily suffer too much from their relocations. But again, it's cumulative, right? I mean, that's an ingredient of something of the bigger expansion of things that's going on in the industry. And I think you're just going to see there's going to see a nostalgia factor where people will want to go back to the way things have been. And then
Yeah.
you'll also see the progressive faction where it's like, okay, no, I'd rather just watch very fast episodes on my mobile device because I really don't have time to invest a whole half hour in a show. I just want to watch it 1 minute at a time, while I'm driving or something. I mean, that's kind of like it's almost a generational thing too that is to blame for this kind of growth, because
Right.
it's short attention span theater, right? I mean, you've got people who go to the movies now who just sit there for a 2 hour movie and they're on their phones, right? They're not watching the movie, or they're watching the movie, for a second, and then they're checking their Instagram feed. So it's a different kind of audience now. And so I think that's the challenge, is for the industry to meet them halfway and say, okay, we realize this is what you need to see now. So we're going to tailor what we're presenting to you in such a way that we're both benefiting.
Would you think, with all these transformations, that people would rather, stream, for example, Netflix or Amazon, whatever, instead of going to the movies because it's more comfortable to see it from home, or things like this?
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I'm one of those people. I mean, I can't remember the last movie I went to see, honestly, and I'm in this industry, and that's sad, but it's also because I work a lot and I don't have time. Streaming is very convenient. If I get home from the set at 1 a.m., I know Netflix is there and I can watch a whole series,
Sure.
until I fall asleep. So it's a convenience factor, I think, for a lot of people. And I think also the pandemic fed into that, being sequestered to stay in our homes for a whole year. We got into new habits, and some of those new habits have stuck. And now the industries, not just entertainment, but other industries, food industries, deliveries,
Yeah.
all of
Yeah.
that is having to change the way they do business to fit into the new paradigm.
How do you think that it's affecting the movie and entertainment sector? Not having so much audience physically in the movies, just on digital platforms. Obviously, there's a strategic move, and obviously, the sector itself have to accommodate according how is the audience moving. So, how was Was it traumatic, for people that are in the movies producing? What kind of impact that was when there was, this sudden change?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't affect me in this way, but I know from things I've read and conversations I've had that, one big issue of contention with the streaming services was not getting paid royalties, not getting paid residuals, um, not getting paid as much in the long term
Right.
as people used to get paid before streaming. And so I think that the unions bear a big responsibility in negotiating and keeping their members happy. And frankly, I don't feel that the Screen Actors Guild does enough to protect the jobs of people who are kind of in the middle income level. They're not the A list. They do a great job protecting the A list, but I don't think they do as great a job protecting the B, C, D, and E list actors.
Yeah.
And I think that's a reason that some people quit the unions. They choose not to become union, or like me, they become FI core, financial core, meaning you're a dues paying non-member. So I pay dues. I can work in any union job that's offered to me, but it also allows me in the state of California, because it's a right to work state, to also do non-union work. And that for me, every person is different, every person's
Yeah. Yeah.
subjective, but for me, that's how I make a living. That's how I pay the bills, is being able to not only do the union work, but to also do the non-union work. And I think more and more actors, unless the union steps up and starts protecting those lower level positions, more and more actors I think might become FICOR.
Right. Is there a lot of differences between the types of movie that the union has and the non-union has? I mean, are they very different, or it's just the same, just different?
Yeah, I mean the
They
big budget
both.
movies, the big Harrison Ford movie or the Marvel comic movie. I mean, those are going to be under SAG, SAG rules.
Right.
Um, but because the film industry is so used to union rules, even when you work in a non-union environment nowadays, you're working with the kind of quality and the expectations and the requirements of a union film. So it's it's almost um, it's almost the same across the board. Um, the non-union regulates a lot of music videos, a lot of commercials are now going non-union, whereas it used to be a lot of the commercials were union, and now I think they're straying more into the non-union realm. Um, a lot of uh, a lot of the streaming is kind of a mixed bag. It just depends on how big the service is. But I think that the beauty about being FICOR is being able to work either one, and um, especially for younger actors, what happens is sometimes a young actor will get a big break, and all of a sudden the union will swoop in and say, "Okay, you've worked 3 SAG films, and now we require you to join the union." That actor may not have enough skills or may not be ready to
Right.
join the union, but they become a must join. So they have to pay an initiation fee to the union, and they have to join the union in order to accept that next contract. Or the union will tell the producer, "You can't hire this actor because it's a union contract," and he refuses to join the union. So that's almost doing a disservice to the actors, right? Because you're forcing someone to join a union
Yeah.
before you're ready
Yeah.
to. Then they join the union, and there's no jobs for them because they don't have the skills to get that job. So I think the unions need to do a little bit better job. It can't be as greedy, just like, hey, we want initiation fees from everyone. We want $4,000. We want dues. We don't care what your skill level is, because that's doing a disservice to the actor's career.
So what you're saying is that they should be a bit more regulated, let's just say, instead of just instead of selecting, people who have actually the expertise of renting certain amount of movies. They should not select just everyone just like that.
Yeah, there's a
So,
three voucher system. So anyone who lucks into getting three vouchers could join the union. And, it might take the union a while to track them down. They could work
right,
9 or 10 jobs, but
right,
then the union eventually is going to contact that producer and say, you can't hire this person until they join the union. And, um, and so that forces the person to join the union if they want that job. And now that they're a union member, they're competing against other union members for those union jobs, and they may only have 10 jobs to their name, whereas they're competing with someone who has 300 jobs to their name and that amount of experience, and
yeah,
they're just not ready to compete.
yeah.
So the only choice they have is to either become FICOR or to quit the union. And that's a waste of money because then they become a must join all over again.
So I guess in the end, the competition gets much higher for actors, especially if you don't have enough expertise. I mean, the situation becomes very complicated for them because it's like you have to do it in one way, but you're not sure about how it's going to be your future, right? Because you might not get the position to get the role because you're competing with people with 15 or 20 years experience with that done 10, 20, 30 movies. So of course, it's very competitive and it's a bit unfair, right? I mean, there should be more fairness between one and the other, right?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, is what the producer needs, right? They're going to cast the person they want for a role, and it could be a person with no experience, but maybe they have the charm and everything needed to carry the role. Um, the other problem is that people sometimes move to LA and they take a bus from somewhere in the middle states, and they're fresh off the bus and they think they're going to make it into Hollywood, and they've become a small fish in a big fishbowl before they should have. And sometimes the better thing to do for an actor is to stay in that small town that you might live in and just become a
Right.
bigger fish before you move out here. Don't just come here with no experience, assuming that you're going to break into an industry that's very competitive. Um, that's a mistake I see a lot of people make. And there's a right way and a wrong way to do things, and you
Right.
learn from those things.
I guess in the end, between actors, everyone talks with themselves to see what's the right way to, to do the proper approach, I would guess. So, Ray, what are your future plans right now with, your new projects? You want to tell us a bit about where you're getting involved? What are the future launches, for some movies?
Yeah, I mean, I just finished a 3-day shoot on a short called Pina Colada. Looking forward to
Okay.
that coming out. I got to play I guess he's a male gigolo demon or an angel.
Okay.
It depends on how you look at it, but the premise is you say Pina Colada 3 times and I appear and kind of turn your world around. So it's an interesting story, cleverly told. So I'm looking forward to that hitting film festivals in the next year or so. Tonight, I've got a film premiering at the Pan African American Film Festival in Culver City. Uh,
Okay.
it's called History of the Black Underworld, um, and it's a film by Matty Rich. So it's having its premiere tonight there. I just learned that it's sold out, so hopefully, because I waited till last minute, hopefully I'll be able to go see it since I'm in it. But I play a low-level mafioso character named Angelo. Um,
Okay.
but it's got some good star power in it. Frank Stallone is in the film. Um, Jack Scalea. Um,
Okay.
so there's some names involved, and Maddie's a known filmmaker, especially in the Sundance circles.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that that'll be a nice premiere tonight for them, even though it's raining right now here in Long Beach where I'm at. But Culver City is about 30 or 40 miles away. And then, I've got some big action films that hopefully will come out in the next year or so. One is called The Mask, uh,
Okay.
and it was by a Ukrainian filmmaker with an all Ukrainian crew. But we shot that. That was the one I referred to. Um, Actually, it's called My Face. It was called The Mask. It got retitled to My Face. But we shot that in Washington and in
Okay.
LA. And then another film I shot in Oregon and here in LA called Sky Crash. It's a sci-fi film about UFO debris and its impact on a future society. Um, yeah, some really interesting stuff on the horizon coming out. Being an actor, it's about the pipeline. You want to have
Yeah.
things you're auditioning for, things you're in, things that you did that are in the can, things that are in post production, things that are coming out, things that you can go attend and promote, and you want to keep that pipeline full. So that's the challenge.
And of course, you need to also have the skill of improvisation, right? Because each role in each movie is dramatically different from one another. How do you convene yourself, getting the experience that you have, of course, to do all these changes dramatically, being one actor and then being a totally different actor? How do you do it yourself, and how do you learn to do it like that?
Yeah, I'm reading some interesting books now that say that you should really just hone in on one type of character and really promote that one type of character to everyone. And there's some truth to that. I do think there are some character actors still out there that play multiple different types of roles and do it well. Um, this particular book seems to feel that those type of actors only come along once in a long time. I feel like I could be one of those actors because I do get work that's very diverse. But I would say that, I usually am seen. If you see me for the first time, you're thinking, oh, thug number two, or, mafioso guy number three.
Yeah.
He's a big, tall guy. So we're going to picture him. Or biker number five, you know. Um, but I do get some comic roles, some roles that are against type, and I credit that to really my improvisation skills. I think when I do a self tape or when I show up to set, yes, I do the lines that the writer wrote because that's very important. That's the writer is the only one that's really creating new art, right? You've
Right.
got to do what the writer says. But the actor is also a writer because they're interpreting what the writer has written, but they're putting it through their experiences and their logic and their knowledge. And in the course of doing that, sometimes the actor adds to what the writer's written, right? Because they're synthesizing what's been written and they're they're making it part of them. And when you do that, when you're truly in character, sometimes thoughts come and things, you evolve the character. And in the course of doing that, improvisation occurs. And so I think I'm fairly good at ending a scene with a little bit something extra. And unless the director says don't do that, they enjoy it. They want it because it gives them something extra to play with in the editing room. And I think that little something that I'm able to provide gives me a leg up over some other actors, perhaps.
Right. So, I mean, I guess it's a matter of learning, right? I mean, as far as you go, you keep on learning and how to change your character and how to evolve your acting according to dialogue, because I think that's the complicated part, right?
Yeah,
And from that, you just start to develop the skills accordingly, I guess, to the experience according to years. So, Ray, what advice would you give for new coming actors or people just getting into the entertainment sector? what advice that you could give them, as in a shortcut of all the things they should pay attention with, to get, for example, where you are today, according to your experience?
Yeah, my gut reaction to that question is there are no shortcuts. You have to
Right.
live, you have to go your path. You have to. Everyone is different. Everyone brings something different to the table, and you have to realize what your strengths are and capitalize on them. You have to realize what your weaknesses are and solve them. And you have to avoid scandal. You have to keep your nose clean. You have to have a good reputation, and you have to show up on time. You have to know where you're going. You have to learn your lines. You have to be there ready to go.
Yeah.
Film is film is kind of do or die. You've got a crew. You've got hundreds of thousands of dollars being spent on the support team that creates an environment for you to film your scene. And if you come to set and they're ready for you and everything's lit and you're mic'd and they've got the camera focused and they're ready to go and you're not, or you don't know your lines, or you're wearing the wrong costume,
Yeah.
or or you think it's the wrong scene and you've prepared for the wrong scene. I mean, that's on you, and you're costing the film money, and you're not going to get rehired. Um,
Right. Right. Right.
it's all about return on investment and cost analysis, and with the bottom line. And when you do produce, when you are a one take wonder, when you get in there and you do your job, but maybe they need to do multiple takes, not because of you, but because of technical issues, then they see you in a great light because you've brought what you need to bring to this melting pot of film production, right?
Right. Right.
But
Right.
you got to get training. You can't just show up and think, oh, I'm handsome or beautiful, and oh, I can memorize lines, or you gotta do your due diligence. You gotta pay your dues. You gotta start small and do the grunt work and be a background actor or work as a PA on a set to get a different perspective, or go to a class or get a coach or get a manager. Um, you got to get good headshots. They got to represent you. They've got to look like you. And then when you go to your auditions, you gotta act like you know what you're doing. You gotta, even if you're faking it until you make it, you've got to have confidence. Confidence wins the day.
So I guess people should thank for this advice, because for sure, I mean, to get all this advice, you need to have all that experience in order to know what they need to do. So I hope it's insightful for everyone that is hearing or will hear this episode for sure. So Ray, how do you see yourself within the next 5, 10 years? You see yourself acting, you producing? How do you see yourself?
It's an interesting question. Yeah, I'm toying with the idea of eventually producing something.
Okay.
But, it goes back to what I was saying about when I was producing in the theater world, that I didn't really enjoy producing and directing and also being in something. So I have to figure out why I would want to produce if I do produce. Um, but yeah, my intention is to continue acting, to keep building on where I'm at now, to hopefully become more desirable, to have more. Um, every job, whether it's low paying, high paying, every job is an opportunity to expand your network, to meet a new director, a new assistant director, a new gaffer, a new PA, a new cinematographer, someone new that you can add to your Rolodex, right? Your lifetime
Right.
Rolodex.
Right.
And they in turn add you. And hopefully, if you're making, good contacts, you're leaving good impressions, you're doing a good job, then they will remember you. And when another opportunity comes along, you'll get work just through referrals. So my hope is that that will continue to grow. It's already happening, but I'd love for it to even become more plentiful, because a lot of being an actor, a lot of the work is getting the work. the
Yeah.
audition process, callbacks, chemistry tests, memorization, all of the factors that go into getting you to that day where you can actually go in and act. And if you can cut some of that down, if people will just hire you based on your reputation, or you've already worked for them before doing a similar role, so now you don't have to audition for the new role that's similar to the one you just did, and they just
Yeah.
call you, that's a great place to be. That cuts down a lot of the work. Um, so I'd like to be in that position, and I'd like to get bigger and better roles. I don't think I'll ever be a leading man. That's not my type, but I could certainly be the villain in a film or a supporting character in a bigger budget film,
Sure.
or a series. I'd love to get a TV series. So that's kind of where I'm aiming.
What kind of TV series have you have in mind? Is it like the similar roles that you've been doing, or something different?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a nerd, so
Right.
I love science fiction.
Okay.
Star Trek is a love of mine, so somewhere in their world, that would be like a dream come true to be part of that mythos.
Okay.
One of these days, maybe someone will throw me in some Klingon makeup and prosthetics, and I can do a gruff voice and be
Okay.
but
Nice.
but
Nice.
yeah, we'll see what happens, or some
Did
vocal.
you get voice training also to do some type of characters in your past?
Yeah, I've had training. I'm a singer too, so
Okay.
I would say I'm a full-time actor, part-time singer because I do a lot of vocal work with churches and concerts and a cappella groups here in
Okay.
California. So I think that training, that bass baritone vocal training, also helps me in my speech and my acting. Sometimes I sound a little too polished, so I have to kind of pull it back a little bit. But you get used to projecting and resonating, and sometimes it's not always what you need in a certain role. So yeah, you're just playing around with the voice, making it work for every circumstance.
It's a very differentiating skill. I mean, because that's very hard to do. I mean, to change your voice dramatically, um, even not only for the brain, because I mean, you need to figure out from the brain how to change it, but also vocally, you need to change physically the tone of the voice. I mean, it's really, I think it's very complicated because I mean, to do it myself, I wouldn't do it. I mean, of course, you need to have a lot of training and practicing on that, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are actors and other performers out there whose voices are completely fabricated. You
Amazing.
hear them, you see them in movies, they always use that voice in the movies or in interview. But when you hear them just in conversation at the coin laundry or the liquor store, they sound completely different, right? They're when they've got their guard down and they're just being
Amazing.
themselves. Um, I haven't become that sophisticated, or where I've developed a fake voice that I use all the time, but I do occasionally use fake voices in film roles because someone wants a gruffer, deeper, bikery sounding guy, or
Okay.
it comes out in a dialect if I'm doing a western or I'm doing um, something that's a little grungier. The voice gets grungier. So um, I had one director tell me that my normal voice is boring, and that they want the grungier voice. They don't want to hear Ray Buffer. They want to hear the grungy
Right.
voice.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm like, okay, well, cool. I can work with you on that.
Interesting. Interesting. Ray, well, one of the things I wanted to mention was not far long ago when you start communicating. I saw some addressing in some media, addressing you some time ago. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I know what you're referring to, and really anyone who Googles me will see some of that same stuff on TMZ and the Daily Mail and Guardian and New York Post. Yeah, I had a scandal. Again, I'm a nobody, and 2 years ago I was even more of a nobody. But I made some mistakes. I shoplifted, and I ended up pleading guilty. I ended up doing some community service. I went to a court-appointed class, um, and I paid full restitution. But that situation was caught on film and publicized through TMZ and other outlets, and it built me into something more than what I was. I mean, when the news stories came out about it, people were commenting, "Who's Ray Buffer? Why am I watching? Why is this news? Why report this?" And really, it's just about the nature of media now, sensationalism.
Yeah.
Clickbait. People. The news now just reports things in order to get clicks and get likes and get
Yeah.
watches and eyes. And it doesn't really matter whether it's even newsworthy. Um, but I lost
But
some.
in the end, what we're saying is that because it's sensational, is because it's not the guy around the corner. It was Ray Buffer. It was already a person that was known. So of course they took the advantage of taking that to a higher sensational level, right? To get more
Yeah,
attention to the news.
yeah, yeah. And I regret that it happened. And I think the most, not the most important, but as important as paying restitution and doing all those things I had to do on the legal side, I did the work to figure out why I was making those kinds of mistakes. I think hubris. I think that things were going well for me, and sometimes when things go well for you, you self sabotage. You do
Yeah.
things to kind of throw yourself off the path that's going well. And I think that factored in, and some other things from my childhood and just mental health things that I dissected with the help of professionals and figured out a way not to ever repeat again.
Yeah.
And I think that most importantly, I came to a realization that mistake, that awful thing that I was doing, um, didn't define me. That I didn't just have to go down a spiral. I had jobs that I lost because of it, because the victim or friends, acquaintances of the victim might have contacted them and said, "Hey, did you know that Ray Buffer did this?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they would contact me and say, "Hey, we have to part ways with you." And I would lose contracts and work at that time because of that. But on the same page, I also had directors and filmmakers and colleagues come to me and say, "Hey, this isn't you. I know who you are. You're a great guy. You just kind of screwed up, but this doesn't have to define you. I'm still here for you. I still want to work with you. I look forward to working with you again."
Yeah.
And it was those people that helped me realize it's not over. I don't have to become even more depressed because of this situation. I just need to figure out how to move on from it and how to turn the page. And so dealing with everything legally, doing what I needed to do there was the first step. The second step was figuring out what went wrong, why I was doing these things. And the third step was just finding the strength to put one foot in front of the other and keep moving forward and not let it drag me down. And that translates into everyone's life. Everyone will
Yeah.
make a mistake. Everyone will do something stupid. And you can't let that define you. You can't let a failure define you. The whole nature of failures is to teach you a lesson on what not to do, right? If you don't make the mistake, then you don't become a better person. And that's what I have to focus on.
Absolutely. In the end, anyone in this world, no one is perfect. So if you are doing whatever work you're doing, in some point, you'll get side effects. If you've been, a huge amount of years doing some work, in some point you get drained, or you get too tired, or you're overheaded about so many situations that just come up with, and you do something that is out of you. And this happens unfortunately. But also society helps to develop this thing. I mean, I'm not sure about your case, But how did it got into you? Was it because of COVID stage? That because things were changed and everyone was living like in four walls, and that affect you? Uh, what about exactly was the root of source of this situation?
Right. Well, I don't want to delve into too much of it because some of that's
Right,
like mental health side. But
right,
yeah, I mean, the specific situation involved collectible comics, particularly older comics, and it's something that as a child I used to collect. And back when I was a child, my father was still with me, and I think when my father passed away shortly before I started collecting comics again, I think that that kind of fed into or somehow stimulated
okay,
things that I used to do, and so there was some deep depression going on, that factored into it. During the pandemic, I was collecting these types of older comics, but I was doing it all by mail. I was, buying, on eBay and such and such. And then when the pandemic ended, I started going to stores and I wasn't shoplifting all the time. I was buying a lot of times, but um, there did um, become this issue where um, I started doing things I shouldn't be doing,
right,
um,
right,
and when
right,
I was caught, that's when I had to really face everything. I had to come to terms. So it was actually a good thing, really, that it happened because it forced me to realize what was deficient in my
yeah,
life, why I
yeah,
needed this dopamine high or this why my body wanted this kind of stimulation. And now I figured out ways to do it without feeding the beast, without doing wrong to someone else. And that was a journey. That was a revelation that had to come. And I regret, you know, that this happened, but in a way, it's been a growing pain. It's been something that has allowed me to look inward and realize, you know, where I was deficient and what I
right,
needed to do to address that.
right. What I usually say all the time is there's not really a failure or a mistake or a downfall. Of course, the situation as it was, is a bit more dramatic, but when you take it as an experience, then it becomes positive in a way that you learn from that and not do it again. And of course, you gain also the experience to find out and discover yourself deep inner to know what was wrong. In the end, that's I always ways, tell people how to overcome it, because when you are doing, doesn't matter what you're doing, you never know the end result. So if you are in a sector for over 20 years, you're going to have a lot of situations. If you don't have them, it's because you're not doing anything. And of course, when you have them, of course, each situation will give you impact. What kind of impact? Well, it depends. If you are drained, if you are overworked, if you are working too many hours day by day, in the end, you're starting to feel unrationally, and you're starting to be have unrationally, actions, mentally and physically, because you are overworked, as I usually say. And unfortunately, this actually happens in any sector in these days, because usually people, when they are deep in their sector and they have a lot of job and work, they work 14, 15 hours a day, sometimes more, sometimes a bit less, but that's the average. So, I mean, if you count the amount of hours per week and then per month, and you have a break maybe once a year or twice a year, for that amount of hours is not enough. So if you don't have the proper people around you, it becomes difficult how to handle the situation and how to overcome it, because you are experiencing yourself, and sometimes you cannot auto evaluate what are you doing. And that's when it comes, when should people be around the person. And usually these kind of things happen when the person is alone, working alone, and handling everything around the life and the environment around the person. Of course, you cannot figure out everything because you cannot look at yourself every day or every second. And this is where unrational reactions appear. But this is not like, oh, it's a big dramatic thing. Well, it was a thing. Everyone learned from mistakes, and no one's perfect. I mean, you present me someone that never done a single mistake in his life. It's not possible. It's not possible.
Right,
I
right.
don't know anyone, even myself, I don't know anyone. If you are really deep into work and you really work hard and you've done a lot of things, doesn't matter what sector you're in some moment you do something, because it's all a reaction of the environment, sometimes society itself, because unfortunately today's society, if you don't have the right people around you, people are also selfish, so that becomes more intrusive also to a person, because a person feels like cannot trust anyone, so feels afraid of talking or open to anyone because doesn't know what's going to be the outcome or what the other person is going to do with that information. So, I mean, people need to understand that the circumstances in these days is not like when it comes up on the news, oh, this happened. Yeah, but why? Have you
Yeah.
found out why? What was the main reason? Why you being so dramatic to a thing without actually auto evaluating the whole circumstances when that could actually happen to anyone, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
this, and this,
I
this is the
think
message that I leave to the general media, because they like to be sensational and sometimes even create media when there isn't. So let's just leave it there. Yeah.
yeah, it's hard to find good media these days. It's all become entertainment. It's becoming more so. But someone said too that if you've never made a mistake, then you don't know anything,
Of course,
right?
of, of course.
Because we
Uh,
learn from our mistakes, right? So you don't, if you've never made a mistake, you've never failed, then you've never learned anything. You just had everything given to you, and you're just you know
and this is actually one of Einstein's theories. It's written there, and it is also written that you should not do over and over again the same situation and expect a different result. So the two theories are actually written already, and it's there. So when the person said, "No, I've done everything perfectly in life," and what actually have you done? Because if you are done many things, your life, and you done everything, but there's something wrong there, because that's not entirely possible to be, a life stage or a dozen of years, 20 years, and say, I never done a single mistake in my life. For myself, I'll never believe that, because
yeah,
that's not possible, you know. And whoever comes saying, life is perfect, life is a journey. You cannot even control yourself what's going to happen. For example, right now we're talking, do we actually know what's going to happen tomorrow or in 2 hours?
no,
No one knows, right? So this is how far it gets. So how can you say something, for the general media, to promote something that doesn't have any the actual content or the knowledge itself to produce such news? So I think the news has to be founded. When you publish something, it has to be with foundations. With the real story, like a movie. A good movie has a good script, right? So, I mean, if it doesn't have a good script, so of course the movie doesn't have the enough quality, at least the outcome, because the script is, it's a low quality. So, like I said, if you induct a low quality script, you're going to have a low quality movie, right? So
mhm,
it goes the same way. So And this goes the same with news. You produce a news that has no foundation, and you make it sensational because it's the light of the internet. But you are playing with a person, and it's a person reputation for over 20 years. And that's what they don't think, because then if we go to them and said, what if it was you? What has happened to you? What is the editor of that news actually was the one that actually, does something, and the news reverted to him. How do you think about that? So this is a question that most of the time they have no answer, because
Well,
they only think,
I think because we've monetized the news, that it's not about the news anymore. It's not
yeah,
about the story. It's about what's going to get someone to click on something. What's going to get somebody to watch a video, or to read the headline and click on this so that we get money. And
yeah.
it's not about what it is, or the substance of the news, or the backstory, or digging deep. It's just about how do we get someone to click on this, and it's more and more like that today.
How do you think? Or do you think? Let's put it this way. Or do you think that any of these will change in the near future, or will just get worse?
I think that it's up to the next generation, right? I mean, we've got the current generation, which from what I understand, they appear to be very passionate. But I think it's going to be the generation after them that's going to be on a political scale, and on a kind of a world consciousness scale, that's going to be the ones that will decide, hey, we need a good, independent, neutral media back. We need unbiased reporting. We need to remove the entertainment factor from basic elements. We need to bring truth back to facts. you
Yeah,
know
yeah, yeah.
the truth can't just be something that's out there.
Yeah,
Everyone
it,
can't
it,
have
it
their
feels
own
like
truth.
it feels like today the truth is not really important to hear it anymore, and it is. I mean, that's the reality of our society. Because if you are in a society that the truth has no value, so what are we doing here, right? I mean, at least that's my opinion. And I see this is far gone, because the ideals and the values in this society and next generation, I think are totally wrong. Because the main values is truth, honesty, and how you dedicate yourself within society, and what you apport into that for future generations to continue that, right?
Yeah,
So what I see now is, it doesn't matter what you're doing, you just need to do whatever it takes, even if it's a lie, and just do business out of that. It's totally wrong. I
yeah,
mean, we are projecting the wrong values to everyone. And the worst thing is, it's already starting from school. So people, when they are grown ups, already have the wrong values when they enter the professional career. And this is where people should really think and start thinking in, what is the proper value that my family or my kids or my grandkids should have. Because, for example, modeling, there is a big mistake that I see. I had in previous conversations with some of the guests, that in modeling there's no regulation at all, and even most of the times the fault is from parents, that they just want their kid or wherever to have fame, to make their lives easier. But you should not do that. I mean, you are willing to do whatever it takes to make, your son or your daughter to go through certain amount of things that no one really want to go through, just because you feel that's the right way. I mean, you know, we need to have a balance. I always say a motto that I have is not either 8 or 80. It has to be something in between. Common sense, right? I mean, there has to be common sense. You cannot be in the modeling world, and just saying that you have to sleep around, to promote yourself. I mean, that's not modeling. It's like you inducting yourself to a new industry. You
right.
know, and this is, the current reality, according what I saw in majority, and it's very wrong. It's very wrong. People are being inducted totally the wrong values. The industry should not look at it as there's ways to monetize it. There's always ways to earn money honestly, and this always gives bad reputation if you're putting wrong values in it. Doesn't matter how you hide it or how you do it. In the end, the truth always comes out,
Sure.
and that's
Let me
bad.
clarify that if anyone out there is able to put me into a Star Trek series, I will sleep around for that job.
I wasn't expecting that. No live anyway. Oh my god, amazing! Really, you got me. You know,
I
you
got
really.
you.
I was
Did
not
I?
expecting that at all. You know.
The deadpan delivery.
Right, right, right.
No,
So
but but what you're saying is true. But I think that that we've got things that are happening on a world scale to suppress facts and suppress truth. But I think on a one-to-one basis, as human beings, when we're in a room together and we're
yeah,
having conversations,
yeah,
I think the morals and the wokeness and the values we have as human beings, I think they become more apparent in those circumstances than they do in a world circumstance where we're just reading what the media wants us to read.
yeah,
Um, Unfortunately, the political world does affect the educational world.
yeah,
And if one regime wants our youth to believe one thing so that when they grow up, they're supporting that regime, then the damage that they're doing is by changing the educational standards because they realize those eggs are going to hatch and those kids are going to grow up and they're going to become the next people who believe what they want you to believe. So we have to be careful, on a political level, how we're addressing all of that.
and also you did mention this important point. If we are degrading, which you was mentioned today, I mean, Elon Musk actually mentioning today in the UAE Summit of Government that according to ECB, United States is on position 30th of 30 in the education. So it's something I think they should need to figure out, how to change what they're doing because it's wrong. I mean, they are spending a huge amount of money in education, and the result that they're having from education, it's the worst ones, in the scale. So, and this makes a remark that if you have people with not enough culture in society, of course, it's easier to manipulate. I don't want to get in political, but it all started like this. In the end, I think people should have more common sense. They should claim their rights, and they should be properly educated. To be in the market or in the country, in at least to have an opinion about what's happening around them and what should they do. Because if you don't have enough culture or how to defend yourself intellectually, it's very easy to get manipulated. I just leave it there because in the end we're getting political, but it's the reality. And I see this not only in the States, but every country in the world right now. And the political shift that is going and the way it's going, it's very wrong. It's very wrong. For example, I can see the consistency in education today. When I did my degree back in 1998, has no consistency at all today as what it was before. I mean, people before were much highly educated than they are today. How is it possible? It's been over 26 years, and I can see the consistency is lower than before, where it should be totally the opposite. Because I mean, there's a lot of story, in front of it. But it became to that. It became to that because the way it was degraded, it started wrong. For example, some scales they decrease it from 5 years that it was to 4 years. How are you going to compress one full year in in divided in the other four? I mean, you need to remove information, so you're degrading the information on the student already. So all that information that he's not having is less preparation when he's going to the professional market. So he's already going to professional market not ready and with less information than before.
Mm.
And this makes the society that we have today, that is, it can be manipulated by reality shows, by media, because you need to have high knowledge to have common sense, to be able to see I don't want this, I don't believe that, I don't believe this, I don't believe that. So having lower, it's very easy to impound whatever it's happening. Yeah.
Well, I think, what we were talking about earlier, what's true for the individual is true for the world, right? So sometimes the world has to make a mistake in order to learn from it. And so I think that's what we're seeing now is that the world cumulatively is making a series of mistakes. And hopefully we'll all survive them so that we can learn from them. But it's an ebb and flow, right? It's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. That's the story of our existence.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we leave the show, I always say to my guests to say a power message. What will be your power message today, Ray?
Believe in yourself so that others will also believe in you.
Wonderful. And with that, I think it's a wonderful and very powerful message for people, really, to make them think. It's actually very, very powerful. I appreciate it.
Sure.
So, Ray, thank you so much for having this show with us today. It was very insightful. Thank you for sharing all you shared today, and also to anyone that was actually here. For sure, it will be very insightful to have all this information wherever they come for entertainment sector. For sure, they will learn a lot from this. I'm truly appreciate it. Thank you so much, Ray, for being with us today.
If anyone sees this and they want to continue the discussion, feel free to reach out to me on social platforms. Again, you can just Google me and find me. But I'm on Instagram and Facebook and all those other types of places.
Perfect, perfect. Ray, thank you so much. And that's all for us. Catch us on the next show again. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.